part of this series, Scotia has looked at the lives and the views of veterans, some of which have served Scotland for most of their lives, but also those from further afield. Not corporations, not politicians, veterans and their views and their lives straight to you from Scotia.
I joined in, I joined the Navy. The equivalent here would be the Royal Air Force, because I was never on a ship. I was in naval aviation. I went to boot camp on January 31st, 2001, sorry. I joined up right before the coal got bombed. That's what I'm trying to say. I signed up to join the Navy about 5 months before I went to boot camp, and it was the weekend before the U.S. coal got bombed. So I was like, that was interesting. And then I went to boot camp in January 2001, and I was in aviation electrician school when September 11th happened. And 3 weeks after it happened, I got orders to Bahrain in the Middle East. The reasons that I joined is pretty common to people in the U.S. in the middle of the U.S. is I had to get out of there. I was in a small town. My family, we weren't well off, and that was an escape. I got money for college. I got to travel the world, or the promise of traveling the world, which it delivered. And I was really just looking for a way to get out. And even though it wasn't common anymore in my generation or even my my grandparents' generation, pretty much all the men were in the military. And my aunt had said to me at one point, because I was really unhappy, the year or two before then, with the way that society was maybe, or my place in it, I'm not sure. But my aunt had said, why don't you join the Army? And, college was too expensive. I was going to university, and I talked to recruiters from each branch, and the Navy made me the best offer. So I joined the Navy. It's funny because when it happened, I didn't think it was really that interesting, but I always felt like I was getting a pat on the back for just doing my job. And now that I'm outside the military, I kind of miss it a little bit of being told you do a good job, or here's an award for doing your job. And that sort of certainty, not in existential certainty, but here's your job to do. Once it's done, you get good job or you get told how to fix it. And that's something that stuck out. And the camaraderie, I flew with people that ideologically we were at opposite, and we really didn't get along. We kind of hated each other outside of work, but we had to sit next to each other for 8 hours at a time and have a conversation, work together. So being able to get past disagreements and do what you needed to do is something that I miss sometimes. I think the first time I heard about Scottish independence was right after my husband and I had decided to move here, and the 2014 referendum was I only saw the BBC, but I saw some coverage, and we both approached it as, we'll see what happens. We were very neutral. In the US, if you're not a citizen, you don't get a say. So we never thought it was our place to say. When we got here, I think it's sort of in the American spirit of saying, well, if you want to be independent and you vote for it, there's nothing, why can't you make your own decisions? It's just a democratic deficit if you can't, and that's unfair. But in 2018, we went on the Indy March here, and it was amazing to hear people say, well, you are Scottish. Because we said, well, we came here on this march because our kids are Scottish. We're raising our kids in Scotland, and this is their future. And it just didn't seem to make any sense. Like, being part of the UK doesn't really make sense for the future of Scotland and the values that, we teach here. We didn't move to the UK, we moved to Scotland. So after finding out, that my opinion was valued and worth something to people here, they started getting into the independence movement. I think a lot of people in the US don't think about the UK a lot as in its separate entities. I didn't know there was a Scottish independence movement until the 2014 referendum, and we paid more attention to that because we had planned to move here. But I think that when people learn that, there's, for lack of a better term, gerrymandering and disenfranchisement due to where you live, they understand the states in the US have more rights than Scotland has in the UK, and any kind of special relationship phrasing or words, it doesn't really hold water if you can't veto Brexit, if you have a mandate for an independence referendum and they can say no without a reason or recourse. It just doesn't make sense. It is sort of natural, in the US it's natural too. I remember being told, well, you vote for a Republican when you're in the military because your funding won't get cut. You'll still have a job. And that was never officially said. That was just something a mentor or a buddy would kind of hint at. But even before I was out of the Navy, and I had Republican conservative friends that were like, this isn't conservatism anymore. So I do think that there's certain things where you're careful and you respect institutions. So in that way, you're conservative with how you proceed with things, maybe more incrementalist. But I can't speak much to here being, I think there's a lot put on being in the Royal British whatever here, and that just doesn't really translate to the US. We're not a monolith. I think veterans are no more a monolith than women or any race or any religion, any ethnicity. There is a sense of community that, it goes across countries. I've met people here. I've talked with different veterans here and been, had conversations with them. And there is kind of a common language almost where you can do military talk and you can get ideas across in a way that it's harder to once you get into the civilian world of discourse. But I think that it's not all good and it's not all bad. Just like anything else in life, if you're stereotyping people because they're a veteran or they're in the military, you're missing out on some valuable insights. I think independent Scotland might be actually able to achieve federalism in one part, where we see it already with Shetland Council wanting more powers. I think that's not a bad thing, and the lie that's being told is that you have to be independent to have that for any part. A lot of things are getting lost in translation. I think that having a decentralized, federalized Scotland where the different regions have a say, so it's not an Edinburgh independent Scotland, it's not a Glasgow, it's not a Highlands and Islands, but we each get to come to the table and talk. That's something that is very valuable, and that isn't achievable in the UK union. I think Eddie Reader said it. She said, I'm all for a union, but not for this one. That's the way I feel. I think that the animosity that's there with Westminster and with the UK will be reduced when we don't have to point the finger at each other and we can be partners again. Or again, ever in our lifetimes. I suppose I have renewable energy stuff that I like too. But working together is probably the best. But I see a will in Scotland to be more sustainable and to have these careers and futures for people that work in the oil industry that can transition to more sustainable energy and help the planet. I think there's a huge will for that that's being stifled right now. I think that I would like to be European. One of the reasons we moved here was so that the kids could get European citizenship. Could have dual citizenship and have the world be their oyster. So there's that part. Sometimes that part of the freedom of movement and stuff like that in the European Union gets lost. It's the fact that people that aren't wealthy can travel, and enabling everybody to have a little bit better life through cooperation, through a more of a labor union type thing. So I would like to be European, but I don't. It's weird being American because you're not American unless you have a certificate saying you're an American, no matter how much you feel like it. And I think that British is sort of that way, where I don't feel British because I don't feel like I'm allowed to be British. I feel Scottish because people told me that are from Scotland, no, you're Scottish and you're welcome and you're valued here. I feel like I would love Scotland to, if not be in the European Union, be in the single market, to have that freedom of movement. I don't know. I think that that's the best road possible, is to have as many partners as we can. So in that way, I feel European, I suppose. I don't feel like I want to be out of the European Union. Seems like a cool party that I just missed, really.